Hi everyone, Karen here. Here to talk a little bit about the Neki Nature app made by 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗀. And we're going to talk about what she's made and then how we might improve it a bit to make it more versatile and expandable. Okay, so here we are in 𝗬𝗵𝗺𝗀, and 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗀 has several different screens. So a lot of work went into this app. Here we have the splash screen, which is very cool looking with this axolotl here. Neki Nature app, the name of the app, and this little tagline down the bottom. So if we were to go to the blocks for screen 0, she's got it on a wait. So this is just a splash screen appears, and then we'll automatically navigate to the second screen, screen 1. She's got 2 buttons. So if we look at the design, so this start button to get started, and this one is also just will take you to a different screen for information. So these are both buttons, but they're pretty cool looking buttons, right? The main start button will take us to the kind of the main menu screen, screen 2, and this is where we get into all the different animals. 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗀 has made these cool little buttons with pictures of all the different animal types, so mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, etc. Down here, she's got a special button for extinct species in the wild. So this will take us to another set of animals that are extinct in the wild. And down here, we got a couple more buttons for information. So these will take you to her information pages. If we look at these code blocks, again, these are all buttons. So every button will take us to a different screen depending on which button we click on. Here are the different information screens that 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗀 has made. So she's given us a glossary, a directory, information on protecting animals. So if we go here, this is how to protect animals. So each of these buttons will take us to one of these screens. So she's got some information here, a directory of places to call or email, website. So we have a glossary here that tells us about different terms about species, endangered species, etc. And then she's got even more information. So some references for, these are pretty much her bibliography for all the work that she did for this app. And then we've got an About Us page, so about the app, and then a little more information on the app. And here's kind of the main part of the app, which is the screens that have the animal information. So 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗀 created this special one for extinct species in the wild. And then we go to the different ones for the different animal types. So we've got mammals, we've got birds, reptiles, amphibians, marine animals, and insects. Let's go back and start with mammals. So if we look at this, okay, so we've got a title, this is a back button, and then if we go here, say to the jaguar, she's created a group called jaguar with the scientific name and the name, and then a picture. So meticulously she has gone through and added these one by one. And then on certain ones, so if we go to the blocks for this, this is the back button. For these two mammals, she's got further information. So the 𝗬𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗀 and this 𝗬𝗫𝗺𝗺𝗀, we're going to go to this screen, feature 𝗬𝗵𝗺𝗀𝗀. So we can scroll over and we see now that 𝗬𝗺𝗻𝗀 has created a separate screen for each of these. So here's the 𝗬𝗬𝗺𝗀𝗀, right? So she's got more information, the picture again, a little more information about it, and then these 5 buttons. And then for each of these 5 buttons, so if we go here, and if we look at the blocks, for each button, she is basically unveiling the information. So she is setting the visibility of the information about that particular button to true and everything else to false. She's got all the information in labels and she is revealing them or hiding them. In fact, let's go back and see how this all works. So let's go back to screen 0, do a web preview. It's a 6-second lag, so she's got to wait So we'll wait 6 seconds. It should take us to this. I'm going to hit start, and then I'll press the mammal button. And then if I click on the 𝗬𝗺𝗀𝗀, it takes me to the 𝗬𝗺𝗀𝗀. And then again, here's the 5 buttons. If I click on KS, it's the same screen, and what we've done is just made certain components visible and other components invisible. The back button will take us back, and we can scroll through each of these buttons and get more information about the 𝗬𝗺𝗀𝗀. And then, of course, the back button will take us back to mammals. Lots and lots of work gathering the information and then creating all the different pages. Now, if we look at this page, the catalog of extinct species in the wild, this looks a little bit different. And if we look at this particular screen, if we notice on this one, we've got the title, we've got the back button, and then this is a data viewer grid. So down here, this is the types, a data viewer grid. So what a data viewer grid will do is allow you to display information from a table. We have here on the left data. She has 2 different tables here. So we're going to click on the extinct animal table. And if we look at what is in this, we've got a lot of different animals along with their name, their scientific name, and then 𝗏𝗡𝗄 has links to pictures, online pictures for each of these animals. So with that information, she is able to display it. With these tables, you can always add more to the table, and therefore, if you've got information on more animals, you can add to it. So the nice thing about this is this makes it a little more versatile. Let's go back to the beginning and I'll show you kind of how this will work. So at the start here, I'll do a web preview. We've got our 6-second timer. Take us to the second screen, start, and I'm going to click extinct species in the wild. And notice that this is scrollable, so all those different rows of the table that 𝗏𝗡𝗀 filled in, and some of the images might be missing, but she was able to fill in a lot of information, and you could always add to this, so you could expand on the list. What I would like to do is, because the mammal page are individual hard-coded information about each animal, we're going to take 𝗏𝗡𝗀𝗀's start with the extinct species and try to take that and use that for all of the other animal types. So the mammals, the birds, etc. So instead of doing it one by one, we're going to make a table and have it display using the data viewer grid. So let's go look at how we did that. As for data sources, if you want to add a new one, I'll just show you how you add a new one. This little plus here. So you can add Google Sheets. This is an Airtable sheet. So if I say create new, it will ask me. So create your own table is within the app. It would require that you edit the app, which you can do at any point. Airtable is in the cloud, so you could be continuously adding data to Airtable that would be reflected in your app even after you've published it. Same with Google Sheets. So Google Sheets and then this Webflow is another way to import data. What I decided to do was use Google Sheets so that I could continue to add to it. In my version here, I've added this table, Neki Nature apps, which is from Google Sheets. So I'll show you what that looks like in Google Sheets. I took all of 𝗏𝗡𝗀𝗀's information that she had collected, which is an enormous amount of information, and I put it all in a single Google spreadsheet. The first tab, I have all the different tabs down here. The first tab is all of that extinct animal information she had that was available on that extinct animal page. Then I grabbed her mammal information. And note that there's only some that have information. So I took the animals that she had special pages for, and I added that information here. So some of them are blank. So this would be, do I have further information or not? And if it says yes, That's what's going to trigger us to be able to jump to a special screen to display that information. And then, so those are the ones that have information filled in. And that correlates to those 5 buttons. So we've got that for all the different types. So birds, there's a couple of birds, the one insect, reptiles, amphibians, and marine animals. Now the nice thing about this is you as a developer can keep researching and finding out the more detailed information and fill it in Google Sheets. And as you do that, it would update within the app. So all your app users would be able to see that information. What we have is let's go to mammals, our mammal page. And what we've done is, much like the extinct species, we've converted it to be a data viewer grid. So we've got the title, we've got the back button, and then we've got this data viewer grid. And if we look to the data viewer grid, what I've done is I've tied it into the data source of my Google Sheet. So that's that Neki Nature apps that I just showed you. These are some other tables that 𝗏𝗺𝗺𝗀 had built in. So I just added this as a data source. And then there are different ways of displaying it. And so you can choose how you want it to be displayed. So I've got it with title, subtitle. And then we've got the name, the common name, and then the Latin name of the animal, and then the picture. So it's a really nice way to display lots of information in a nice grid. Let's go look at the blocks for this. We have, this is the back button, so that's kind of done already. What I've done here is I have created these 2 app variables. So the selection ID, when the user clicks on one of the animals, it relates to a row in the Google Sheets, right? So each animal is a row, and within 𝗏𝗵𝗺𝗀, the row has a row ID. It's kind of invisible to us, but within 𝗏𝗵𝗺𝗀, it knows about it. So when the user's clicking, we want to save that selection ID. And the other thing is we want to know which type of animal or class of animal we're in. So we're in the mammals now, so I want to know which kind of screen we're on, so that when we go to display it on another screen, we'll be able to tell what it is. What we're going to do here is add when the data viewer grid is clicked on. So I'm going to click on this, and when this is clicked on, it tells you the row ID. So it's going to give you that information that relates to the table we have in Google Sheets. So the idea is that if we go back here, only these 2 have more information. So we want to make sure that if it says yes, we want to be able to take them to the screen with more information, but otherwise we just don't want to do anything. So we want to check whether or not this column has a yes in it. So if we go back, we're going to say if, and we want to use a logic. So if this, for the data, we're going to go down here to data sources, and we want to get the value from Neki Nature apps. Now we've got to be careful because I've got 2 of those tables in here, but if Neki Nature apps, and these are the tabs within the spreadsheet, we want to go to the mammals. And then within that, it tells you all the different columns, and we can choose which one. And we want the más información, and we want that to be yes. And I'm mixing my Spanish and English here, but if that is yes, what we want to do is we want to save the row ID, we want to save the class, and we want to send it to another screen that we've made. I've made this animal information screen to look just like the one that 𝗏𝗺𝗺𝗀 made with these 5 buttons, but this is going to generalize our app so that we can send any animal button click to it, and it will display the information by passing the information from our Google Sheet. This is the screen that it's going to go to. So let's go back to our blocks. If this is true, let's set the selection ID to be the row ID, so we can just drag that in there. And then let's set the class to be, and I'm going to use the title that 𝗬𝗺𝗺𝗀 had, so terrestris. So we'll use that as the class, and that's going to tell us which tab to use. We're going to set it, and then we're going to navigate to our animal information screen. Here we are at the animal information screen, and so I did kind of rearrange things a little bit compared to what 𝗬𝗺𝗺𝗀 had. So we still have the back button. I made this kind of more generic, just the animal name and then the scientific name. And these will get filled in based on the Google Sheets. Then we've got our image and then the type of animal that it is. And then all these buttons down here, I've actually put them inside of a group. So that means that I can take the whole group and make it visible or invisible. So it just makes it a little bit easier and less cumbersome in terms of blocks. So remember, 𝗬𝗺𝗺𝗀 had all of those, make these things visible, make these things invisible. Let's go to the blocks just to see kind of how that looks. I've got these filled in already. So when the animal information opens, the buttons will be visible, and then all the kind of informational stuff will be invisible. And then when we say, you know, what is it? This becomes false, the info becomes true, and everything else false. So it's very similar to what 𝗬𝗺𝗺𝗀 had. By combining those buttons into a group, we can make it visible or invisible with a single line of code. So now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So there's kind of a lot here. So the first thing we're going to do is make a new app variable. So I will, and it's going to be a row. So row in Spanish is fila, so I'm just going to use that. And let's just initialize it to a blank string for now. But what we're going to do is when we open it up, what we want to do is find the row to match the animal that got clicked on in the mammal screen. Because we're going to be using the same code, no matter if we're doing mammals or birds or amphibians, they're all going to tell us their class, which tells us which tab to go to in our sheet. So remember, we've got different tabs in our sheet. I'm going to put this into a function just to make it a little bit separate from the rest of our code. So what I'm going to do is create a function, and I'm going to return it. So let's call this getRow. And we're going to return the row to where we're calling it from. Let's put in an if statement, and we'll say if. And if remember, we had the variable class. So if the app variable class, if that's equal to, so this is where we're going to check, oh, was it the mammals, was it the birds, etc. So let's, and remember, hopefully I've spelled it correctly, but if you don't spell it exactly correctly, it's not going to work. Okay, so we're saying if the class is mammals, what we're going to do is return, and this is where we're going to go down to the data source, and we're going to say get a row object. So in this case, we want to get the whole row so we can then access the different columns within the row. So we're going to put it into this thing called a row object. So we're going to, again, choose our Neki Nature apps table, but then this is where we're going to pull out the particular tab. So remember, we're talking the mammals, and then the row ID is going to be our app variable, the class, the selection ID. We're going to return this to where it's being called from, and where it's being called from is, so here from the animal information, when it opens, let's set the set app variable fila to, and we're going to call the getRow function. We're going to make all these things visible, and then we're going to get the row that matches the animal that was clicked on. Okay, so now we've got the row, And now we want to take that and display that information. So we need to fill in, going back here, we want to fill in all this information up here as well as kind of the hidden information behind it with the information from that row. So if we go here, what we now can do is go ahead and fill in the information. So we've got the title of the animal. So we can say set the animal title's text to, and then this is where we're going to go to objects, and we can say get property. Just like with data sources, we have this get value, and we can get the value from the sheet and the tab and the column. Now this, once it becomes an object, we can just say property. So property relates to a column. And here's where we'll just have to copy those in correctly. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make sure that I copy the exact spelling of my column. And then the object is going to be the 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗀, right? So we'll set the title to be the value in that column. I'm going to just copy paste this a few times. So we've got the title, we've got the subtitle, and that's going to be the scientific name. And I'm going to do the type. I believe we just did the same thing. We called this we can continue to do this and keep adding all the information. And let's just continue to fill all these in. So, okay, yes. We've got the image, so that's not a text box, so we have to do the image. So let's go to the image, set the image picture, and this is going to be still the property. So we'll do the property, and the property name is, I think, Imogen. Okay, and then we also have a map associated with it. So I believe that is also a picture. So map, this. Okay, I believe we have all the information we need. Let's go back. I'm going to change this to 1 second just for testing purposes so we go a little bit faster. And this is our main screen again. So let's web preview it. So zooming out. So what do we want to learn today? Let's start. Let's go to mammals. And we know that the 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗀 has more information. Okay, let's go back to editing. Why isn't it going? And let's see. I forgot to add that. So there's our issue. It had the default in there. So it was never becoming true, so I think that's why we didn't go. So let's go back again to screen 0, web preview. Okay, start, mammals, 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗀, yes. Okay, so now it has filled in the name, the scientific name, the type. So let's try, we have it already set up the visible, invisible. So, right, it should fill that in. Go back, filling in each of the pieces of information. This is the map. Gives us a little idea. It's a little hard to see, but where it's located. And then how would you conserve it? Okay, so back, and then we can go back, but we don't have our back button coded yet. So let's go back to editing and fill that in. The one other piece that we have to do for this is because we've potentially come from, we might have come from the mammal screen or the bird screen or the reptile screen. We need to know which screen to go back to. So what I'm going to do is let's make some space up here. When the back button. So when that's clicked, we want to check, well, which which screen did we come from, and that's according to the class. Remember the class. So we could just say if, and I know I'm going to have a bunch of if-elses. So if, and we'll say if the class is the mammals. So let's copy paste that. If that's the case, then let's navigate back to the mammal screen. And then we'll have a series of else ifs for each of the different screens. We will fill that in for each of the other ones, and these are going to match our different tabs. So let's just test to make sure that that does work for, at least for the mammals. If I go back, I always like to start from the beginning. Web preview, start mammals, and let's go to the 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗲𝗀, which we know has a picture. And then if I go back, oh yeah, it's going back to the mammals page. So we know the back button is working for mammals, and then we just have to fill it in for all the other animals. So here I have actually filled in both the get row, so I've made a series of if else ifs for each of the different tabs in our spreadsheet. So this aligns with all the different screens, so the mammals, the birds, the reptiles, amphibians, marine animals, and insects. So I've covered each of them, and notice that all I've done is I've changed which class it is and basically matched the class to which tab here that we're looking at, right? So we've got to make sure we get the tab in the Google Sheet to match the class. And then likewise on the back button, I've updated it so that I return to the correct screen. So each of them are else ifs, and then the final else is just the remaining, in this case, screen or tab. So you'll have a series of if, else ifs, and then finally an else, which would be the last option. And then let's just go back to kind of the next screen. So remember mammals, we have this data viewer grid. I'm going to copy it. Then if I go to the birds, I'm going to paste that in. Now, the data viewer grid here is called data viewer grid 𝗬𝗺, so I'm just changing that. And then I just need to change the class to match my particular class. And let's just make sure I've got it spelt right. So yeah, I've spelt it with a capital A. You just want to make sure those things are spelled correctly and match exactly to what you have in the Google Sheet. And then here, that's right, we want to pull it from the bird tab. So we still look at Google Sheets that, and then instead of that, the scientific name, we want more information, más información. And again, gotta make sure we grab that row ID. We can go through each of these and just add the same block to each of the different screens. And then we just want to make sure we get the right tab in Google Sheets and then also set the class correctly. And then we will all go to the animal information. And so this will make this very versatile so that all the animals, no matter which screen they come from, will get displayed in that one screen. So instead of having a screen for every animal and then our app would get very large, we'll have just that single screen. Let's just test now. I've added for, say, animals, reptiles, etc. Let's just go back to the beginning and try one more time. Let's just check that it works for birds too. And we'll go to the birds. I think this is the one. Yep. Oh, no. Okay, let's look. Let's do a little debugging here. Animal information. So let's make sure we've got get row. Oh, that's what's wrong. All right. Debug. Let's go back again. Try again. Start birds, and we've got the information. Great. We can go back. Oh, took us back to insects again. Another. So we've got a few things that we've figured out are wrong. Oh, sorry, over here. Insects. That's right. Oh, this should be obvious, right? this is where it shows how important it is to test every screen that you have and to make sure that it's working correctly. Because I made a few mistakes with my copying and pasting. So let's view it again. Start. Okay, so we've got that looks good. Now if we go back to our birds. Okay, now that's filling in. Back to our birds. I know that it works for birds, and what I would then do is check out reptiles, amphibians, and check all of my screens and make sure that it's working. So 𝗵𝗺𝗺 started with a really great app, and this is just making it a little bit more robust and expandable.